Welcome to Lecture 8C. We're going to be discussing spoilage, which is an important topic. In the modern environment, the amount of material spoilage will be fairly low. But traditionally, it was quite variable and often hit a materiality threshold. And it is a complex journal entry that is really a stumper for people when they're first studying this area. So, first thing we'll do then is look at the general model. I showed you a bit of a hint of it in the last recording, last lecture, where we tried to indicate that spoilage is a budgeted item that doesn't have an originating transaction with an external party. So that means that's part of the big problem that we face when we're dealing with it. And we'll find that in one particular area of dealing with spoilage. So the idea is, stuff happens, things get damaged, and we have to then account for them because it disturbs the flow and it can actually change the cost of certain products. So first thing we'll do is take a look at the generic model, okay, which I have up here. We're going to have 4 different conditions that you will be in when you're looking at this. When you look at a fact situation, you will need to determine first what situation you're in. Okay, which of these, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4 situations, and then you will have to derive the appropriate accounting treatment from it. So I'm going to review these in the abstract way, then we'll look at the transactions and journal entries themselves. So basically there's a traditional way we did this before world-class manufacturing, and then we have the world-class approach. You notice that the world-class approach is actually the same as this, except in the world-class approach we do it under all circumstances. It doesn't matter why we have spoilage. Here, however, traditionally, we had different categories of spoilage that we had to identify which category something was in before we would know the treatment for it. And this then is the established method that most people learned prior to world-class manufacturing. And a lot of accounting books, a lot of cost accounting books today don't have this or mention this approach because they're still just teaching the cost accounting for traditional organizations. And as I mentioned, in traditional organizations, sometimes you can have large amounts of spoilage, like material amounts of spoilage. So that is one reason we have so many categories. They want to really pin this down. Okay, first of all, you have to say, is something normal spoilage or abnormal spoilage? Normal spoilage is something that you anticipate because there's some feature in your organization that causes a certain base rate of spoilage. If that's the case, then the treatment is down here in this section. If you have something that's totally unexpected, like you have a line or a job or a plant that almost never has anything spoiled and they have damage to something, that would be the abnormal spoilage. And notice we're actually going to have a loss. So we will actually take that completely out of the factory. So a loss account, this is your basic financial accounting from your financial accounting course. A loss account is not an account that's inside the factory. Okay? So that means if something is abnormal, it's not really a part of the factory. It's like, like an airplane was flying over and the engine failed and it fell into the factory and destroyed something. Well, that's not that's not something that you expect to recur. Right? It's not anything you can budge about or think about. You never would have thought about this before it happened. So we would say it's abnormal, and it's really not part of running a factory. Protecting against airplanes dropping out of the sky is not factory management. So that means we would take this treatment. Notice I'm not discussing what the treatments are yet, but I'm outlining right now just the context situation, and then we'll talk about what the treatments are. Over here we have what we call normal spoilage. That means it's a base rate of spoilage we expect based on our operations, the type of operations we have. And you can have different rates on different factory production lines and for different purposes. One example I mentioned before, and I'll tell you when you could have some spoilage. Okay, we have this calculator. Let's say you have a company whose colors are red. Let's say Staples. I'm thinking Staples. I think that they had big red, a huge part of their logo is their red sign. let's say that for a special promotion, like this is Staples' 35th anniversary, or one of those things, and they say, we want a calculator. Casio, we want you to make us a calculator, and we want the back plate to be Staples red. And so the people at Casio, they'd say, sure, let me check. How many do you want? And Staples would say, well, I want 50,000. And the Casio guys would say, okay, let me go do my estimate. Now what's going to happen there is higher defect rate. Because this is a known aspect of plastic, that plastic is a chemical. You think of it as something hard, but this started out as a liquid, right? There was a solvent and a hard, there was something that was hard and there was a solvent that melted it, and it's a liquid, and they inject it into this shape. Well, you don't know this, but different colors work differently in plastic. Like grays, blues, and blacks, they work really well. Low defect rates. Plastic likes this. Red is terrible. If you have a red color, and I mean a bright red color, like I'll show you in just a second, your defect rate just skyrockets. Okay, I have a little a podium here that I put notes on. You don't usually see it, but I'm going to hold it up. And so when I say red, I'm talking about this level of red. Okay, you try and put that in plastic, you're in for a world of hurt. You're going to have a defect rate that could be like 5–10%, because the chemicals in red, I should say that the different way. The chemicals that we use to give a red color don't react well with plastic, because it's a chemical also. And red is the chemicals that create red are reactive, right? So red is harder to deal with. Almost every, in anything, in plastic in particularly. That's why you don't see a huge amount of that really, really bright red plastic in a lot of products. This is one reason in everyday kind of products where style is not important, you're going to see blues, blacks, grays, things like that, because they just don't want to mess around. Okay, and also making it red, people are not going to buy this calculator more frequently because it's red, so there's no advantage of going through the hassle. But what would happen is, if they accepted this job and the defect rate, it would be considered normal defect rate because it's forecastable. They will have an estimate that says, okay, our normal defect rate is 0.5%, but when I make this color of red with those chemicals, I can go up to 3.5%. Okay, that's a forecastable error, and we know, in fact, in this case with the calculators, we know it's related to the job itself, because we only expect that rate of defects on the red calculators. Okay, it's not associated with the factory. So this word is facility, meaning it's part of the factory itself. This is the job. One reason we cover this material is Chapter 5, we introduced job order costing. So, we can now talk about things that are associated with jobs. So, here, this distinction is between the job and the facility. If we have a particular contract, like the one I just mentioned with, the red calculator, and we accept it, and it'll have a job number, we'll know we could have a potentially higher defect rate, and we might have an estimate for it. Because in the past, we might have made something with that color of red in that plastic, and we'll know that, we're looking at 3.5% failure on the mold. And failure on the mold would be that the color didn't take evenly. There's splotches or dots or things like that. This, on the other hand, is a different type of defect. It just means that, based on the type of equipment we have, or the dustiness in the factory or something like that, that almost every job has, some defects in it. And we expect them everywhere at a base rate of failure. And so if we find one of those errors, we treat it like this. If we find an error that's related to the job itself, we treat it like that. If we have, bang, an airplane drop on our head, something abnormal, we treat it like this in a traditional approach. If we're in a world-class approach, we always do this. We only have one answer because we assume that we're so good and so smart that more or less we're not going to have spoilage ever at any material level, so we just do the simplest thing. It turns out this is actually the simplest thing. In a world-class location, you're going to do this, you probably will never really have a loss. Here you might have some big losses if something crazy happens. A train runs off the tracks and slams into your building, which happens. In a lot of manufacturing plants, a delivery of big stuff, like if you're making bread, a lot of factories get train loads of wheat coming in. If train comes in too fast, it just knocks very big holes in things. So that would still be considered an abnormal error, because in one factory it may only happen, once every 20 years, even though in Canada it probably happens, a couple times a year, just not in the same place, so not forecastable. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the treatments. Okay, so we've talked about the context or situation. That's analysis one. What the heck's going on? Which treatments are possible? The context tells you the treatment. Okay, in any one context, you're only going to have one treatment. Okay, so I'll start over here. What this is telling you is you're going to take the net realizable value and transfer it to FGI spoilage, finished goods inventory spoilage. Remember, we have a new account in Chapter 5. So FGI, finished goods inventory, is a control account. There is a subsidiary ledger called FGI-spoilage. If we're going to take scrap and resell it to a scrap dealer, whether it's metal or plastic or whatever, we have to sell it from an account. So we have to put it in that account, and then the dealer or the second, whoever we sell it to comes by, we sell it, and we actually then run a journal entry off of that account. However, we have to put it in that account first. And we are going to put it in at the net realizable value. In this case, this means what we think we can sell it for. So if you're making something and it's metal and you destroy it and you look at it and you say, well, that's 100 pounds of steel. If you're in the business, you'll know what the steel scrap dealer will pay you for 100 pounds of steel, right? Because they post it every day. Their truckload's going to come by, a couple times a month or something. So you weigh the steel, you multiply it out by today's rate, and you'll say, okay, the net realizable value, meaning the value I'll get when I sell this, is however many dollars. I'm going to take that out of the job and put it into FGI spoilage. Be careful with what I just said. Now notice, I said don't start working on this until you've really hammered Chapter 4. Because if I say to you now, take something out of a job, a journal entry should flash up into your brains. So if it didn't, if when I said that sentence you couldn't visualize a journal entry, you need to go do another round in Chapter 4 and then a round in Chapter 5 journal entry problems before you come back to this. Because this kind of problem, your expertise level has to be pretty high before you can quickly sort of understand what's going on. So NRV transfer to FGI spoilage means that you're going to debit FGI spoilage and you're going to credit job. So in the account that you have, it'll say WIP job 1225, okay? And that's where the error is. You got to move the stuff out of there. You move stuff out of a WIP account, let me back up. The normal balance in a WIP account is a debit balance, right? It's an asset. You transfer out by a credit journal entry there, and the debit journal entry is to FGI spoilage, okay? So that is that one. This one is the one that, this one, look, at this thing, most of you are semi-beginners. You're going to struggle with that. But the one that's going to blow your minds, as I said in the last lecture, is this one. What you're going to do is take the fair market value of the thing that was destroyed. Now, the fair market value we're going to assume inside the factory would be the value to recreate it, meaning the input costs. So if you're looking at the factory in a job, remember this is all in job order costing now. You have a job and you have $1,000 worth of investment in there. You have raw materials, you have labor, and you have an overhead allocation, it's $1,000. And you have a mistake and you wipe out half of it, right? So half of it gets destroyed. We're going to say that the fair market value is half of the $1,000 that you had invested in it. And so you have to transfer out the $500. This is the one, though, that you're transferring it out of the job, and you're transferring it in to the manufacturing overhead account because, in fact, what you've done is you have just found the spoilage that you had estimated in the budget and that you've put into your POR. So your POR has inside it a little tiny piece that is your estimated spoilage. And guess what? You just found it here. Okay? The next one, abnormal. This is something it's abnormal, so it's really not part of a factory. You can't Factory management doesn't think about airplanes dropping, you know. Now I'm giving you an extreme example, but there are others, you know, hurricanes, things like that. Although you guys are up to your eyeballs in financial accounting, so you know there are places where hurricanes are not considered abnormal. Okay, so even that definition of abnormal shifts depending on physically where you are. If you're in an area where hurricanes roll through, you know, once a year, well, then hurricane damage is not abnormal. Okay, so we have an abnormal issue. And what you're going to do is take the net realizable value, meaning if there's any scrap value, you do that first and you send that over to FGI spoilage. Everything that's left in that account, remember we're in job order costing, so everything is in a job account now. Everything left in that gets written off as a loss account, meaning kicked out of the factory, and it goes lower in the income statement as, you know, loss from abnormal airplane landing on our, you know, roof. Okay? The same thing here. Now, in the world-class organization, it would be very rare to actually see the loss. If you have very small amounts of spoilage, which in that organization, they will be very, very small, you're just going to do this same journal entry, which is you're going to take the plastic or the metal that you think you can resell to a vendor, and then you're going to send it to FGI. Okay? And if it's big, if it's material, you write it off to a loss, but it'll be pretty small. But you know, all factories have it. I've seen them in, you know, the best factories in the world. You still see it occasionally. The Toyota factory in Cambridge, you know, I've been on tours there a couple of times, and you know what? They have off to the side in certain areas, they have stuff that's been damaged on the line. They have a stack of it. Now, it's a really tiny stack because they hardly ever damage stuff. But you know, there will always be one or two pieces there, you know, like a bumper that got scratched and they just pull it off and put a different bumper on. So this is the general model. Now we're going to look at the specific problem. Now this problem is good and bad at the same time. I think the problem is I always do it in class because I think it's just a little bit too tricky for you guys to do on your own because it tries to do too much. You know, it's like an equation with three unknowns. All of a sudden you go, well, I don't think I can do that with algebra, right? So they actually made the situation just a little bit trickier than probably, you know, you would get benefit from. So I'll do it here and we'll work on it that way. So first thing I'm going to do is say, take a look at problem 5.46, item number 1. So we need to look at journal entry 1 that they propose in problem 5.46. Okay? So if you look at that journal entry, what you'll see is debit spoiled goods and credit WIP materials, WIP labor, and WIP overhead. Now what they tell you is that, or what the instructions say is these journal entries are wrong. Okay, so that's why they're stretching this a little too far. Is they expect you to look at this and say, okay, this journal entry is wrong. But what way is it wrong? Like what should it look like? Okay? So first let's look at the facts. So we're looking right now, this is the first incorrect journal entry we have to analyze. Let's review the facts. We have a company, we manufacture product C, has a cost per unit of $1 for materials per unit, 2 for labor, 3 for overhead. During the month of May, 1,000 units of product were spoiled. And the additional information is we can take the waste, you know, that junk, we can sell them for 60 cents each. And all 1,000 units came from job 1236. So they were all in one job that imploded and had a problem. And the accountant proposes 4 journal entries. We're supposed to look at them and then work backwards and say, okay, in what context would we use this journal entry? Okay, so that's where we're doing too much at once. Because they didn't give us 4 good journal entries and say, which context did we use them in? That would be sort of legitimate for people at your level of skill. They actually gave us 4 bad journal entries and say, first imagine how you fix them and then tell us where, you know, when you would use them. So that's a little bit too much, I think. Anyway, but still, if you work with me and follow the way I'm doing it, you still get a lot out of it. Okay? So we're going to take a look at the first one. So we have spoiled goods, $600, WIP materials, $100, WIP labor, $100, $200, WIP overhead. Okay. So we know from this model that we have here, okay, that in all cases, okay, or in all cases, not all cases, but in these three cases, we're going to pull the net realizable value out and put it into FGI, okay, finished goods inventory. So let's take a look at that journal entry that they're talking about and say, you know, like what were they trying to do? And how much were they pulling out? So let's take a look at the dollar values. And we said that we have the credit entries out of WIP. So what they're trying to remove from WIP is 100, 200, 300. So, you know, based on the idea that it's 60 cents each, they are actually removing the net realizable value. They're not they're labeling it in the wrong way, but they're trying to pull the net realizable value out of this, out of the WIP account. So that then if I look at it, I go, okay, the screw up there is it shouldn't be WIP materials. It should actually be one credit entry to WIP job 1236. Okay, for the $600. And then I looked at spoiled goods, and you know, we don't have an account called spoiled goods. So what we do have is an account called FGI. Spoiled goods. So this now at least looks like it's a real journal entry. Okay? The question is to ask yourself, what is the situation? If this is now the journal entry, what situation would you use this journal entry in? Okay? If we reverse, I'm going to get a lot of exercise whipping this blackboard, or it's not even a blackboard. See, I'm an old guy, still call it a blackboard. This whiteboard around. You know why we use whiteboards? It's only about 2 years ago. And I'll tell you what, the boards are more expensive, these pens are expensive and stupid, but it became an issue with air quality because chalkboards create microdust in the air. So, you will live this. I've lived this same issue. Throughout the period of my life, we have made things more expensive as we took on additional responsibilities to other people. Removing chalk from the classrooms was actually done specifically to change the air quality in the classrooms. Okay? Notice that totally increased the cost. One, we had to get rid of the blackboards and bring in whiteboards. That cost a huge amount of money. Whiteboards do not last as long. These things are like 5 times as expensive as chalk, and they get dry, and the professors try and use the dry ones, and the whole thing's a mess. But as a culture and as a people, we've decided that this air quality is important, and we're willing to do the work and make the change. Now, I'm 64 years old. I have seen this happen over and over and over and over again. And you will see the same thing continue. Now, what these changes do is it creates opportunities for companies. But it also means we have to be careful, because something like this is just going to increase costs if we do it in a dumb way. Okay? And it's the same thing with like gender equity or racial equity. You know, the things that we first did to help that actually were really flippin' expensive. You know, if you just say, oh, I have to treat everyone, well, not everyone. If I have to treat people better because of racial differences, I'm going to bring in 2 staff people and have special training. That stuff costs a huge amount of money, right? So that means everything becomes more expensive. But only because when we first do it, we don't know how to do it. Things like that, things like air quality, gender equity, racial equity, you want to build it in so it's part of the base of your system. You never wanted that to be the extra, like that extra office and the extra training. You want that attitude and that training to be part of the core. When you do that, it doesn't cost any extra money. It's when, in the early stages, when you have no idea how to do stuff and you just say, oh, I have to prove that I'm doing something right, I'll hire 5 extra people. That's when all this stuff is just terrible. But you have to learn, right? You have to learn how to do this. But I've seen this happen through fuel. The move from leaded fuel to unleaded fuel was another example. The move from leaded paint to unleaded paint. Right now, I need to get back to this lecture. I could go over the course of my life, this happening like every year to 2 years. Or as a culture, we have gone back and we've said, no, that's unsafe. We have to do this. And as we did this, things got to be a lot more expensive. Even things like CPP, national health care, right? They added on to what we do. There are smart ways to do that, dumb ways to do that. When you do them smart, they're good, but you have to be careful. Just as a side comment, but it's part of cost analysis. You know, when you're a cost analyst and over your life, some people might imagine we're at the end. Like, you know, we're now great and we don't have any need to improve things for people. You're totally wrong. We have a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do in terms of making people safe and jobs safe and life safe. And some things we don't even know about yet, right? Remember I said we're all in a box? There are things that we're doing now that actually we're going to have to change and we don't even know about them yet. And I'll tell you the COVID thing, I know what the answer is right now because it's part of one of the paths we've been on. I forgot, the air quality. Why do you think they stopped smoking in buildings? Because the smoking was bad? No, they didn't care about the smokers. It was air quality. So that's one of the long arcs over my life. I have seen the focus on air quality get bigger, 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 and change after change after change. Filter, no smoking, getting rid of the chalk dust, blah, 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 blah. Guess what? The COVID problem is entirely an air quality problem. Aerosolized things that come from our mouth, right? Aerosolized meaning micro, moisture particles that have bacteria and virus on them. Ultimately is an air quality issue, right? How they solve it, I don't know. But that's going to be an air quality issue that's going to be solved. And it's going to be solved on your watch, right? It's going to be something you guys have to deal with it. So we're back to this. That was it was actually on the topic of this class and analysis. And I was provoked because I'm so irritated with these things. But you know what? It was the right thing to do, okay? I just have to learn to live with it. So here we are. So we had that journal entry that we have the journal entry that was, posted in the book. Then we, just a few minutes ago, I wrote another journal entry out. Now let's look and see which journal entry we're talking about here. Well, actually we're talking about this one. Net realizable value is what we can sell it for, and we're transferred it to FGI. So we can use that journal entry that I had on the board a minute ago in this situation, a normal spoilage that was associated with a specific job. So, this then is the journal entry for normal spoilage associated with a specific job. Let's take a look at the next one. See, and this is this stupid. Okay, look at journal entry number 2 while I curse at these pens and find another pen. Because when you put the cap on them, they sort of rejuvenate a little bit. So I'll trade off and I'll allow the other pen to take a nap and we'll come back and get it later. Okay, journal entry number 2. Have to look here, number 2. You can see spoiled goods, 600, okay. That's similar to the last one, so they're thinking probably about FGI spoiled goods. Then manufacturing expenses, $5,400. So they're trying to keep it in the factory. And then you have that same issue with the way they're transferring it out. That transfer out is actually the same as they tried to do before. So whoever did this is probably thinking about the same thoughts. So let's do that one first, because we have in this journal entry sort of seen that before. Okay? So let's say that we're going to have the same credit entry here. Now we have to look at the other pieces. Now, actually, the dollar figures, you're not going to be able to argue too much with those dollar figures. These are thousands, so this would be 6,000. Okay. So you're actually completely removing the value from the WIP job 1236. Over here, notice we just removed the net realizable value. Here, we're taking out the whole thing. So that's different. The journal entry is the same in that it's a credit, which removes the whole thing. But we got to put this somewhere else. And I sort of screwed this up a little bit. It's a little close together. Let me give myself a little space here. And we have to get rid of $600 and $5,400. Now, the $600, right? They used the same title, so they must have been doing the same thinking. So we'll put FGI spoiled goods. Here then is the question. They said manufacturing expenses. They're trying to keep it in the factory. What can we do to put this into another account that's in the factory? Well, you know, if you don't know this in advance, you're not going to be able to make this up, right? You have to have studied this and look at some of the examples to even imagine what the heck could be happening here, because it's pretty obscure. But if you have, then you would say, hey, wait a minute. I hope this doesn't make you as dizzy as it's making me. What do we have here that actually leaves something in the factory? Well, it's this one. That's in the factory. So if we want to leave it in the factory, that means put it into manufacturing overhead. Fortunately, it's a fairly light board. So what I'm going to say here, and this is also bad penmanship. This is lined up with the $600. And so this then, manufacturing overhead, is the $5,400. So this is normal spoilage, but caused by the factory itself, not caused by the job. So we're taking the entire amount out of the job and saying that job should not be charged with this. We're going to restart it and sell it to the customer, but actually the job was destroyed, and it wasn't the fault of the job, so that job could still be profitable. We're saying, though, is the factory itself is lowering its profitability, and we're identifying that spoilage that we have buried in the POR. Notice in this problem, we're not actually doing the POR. We're assuming you know how to do that, and you're doing that elsewhere. So now let's take a look at the third journal entry. What we have is spoiled goods. First is the debit, loss on spoiled goods, and the same three credit entries that we've seen before. So, okay, let's see if we can put that together. And, you know, what's the most important thing in an accountant's life? Last year's work papers. So guess what I have up here? Last journal entry. Okay. So I can see that what the accountant did was, on the credit side, did the exact same thing they did up here. So they must have been thinking about the same thing. So I'm just going to copy it down, you know, develop it, and see if this makes sense. And this is also telling me they're completely pulling everything out of WIP. Okay, so in their mind is the fact that it's also not the problem of the job either. So something has happened that's not, the job is not to blame. It's like the factory or something else. And we say, it says loss on spoiled goods. Okay, there's nothing that can ever be in a factory called a loss. In the real world, of course, people can do whatever they want. But in the theory sense, if you're using the correct financial accounting theory, there cannot be inside the factory an account called loss. So this probably is what they're really talking about, which is actually, you know, a loss. You might call it loss on spoiled goods if you want, but it basically, the point for us is it's a loss, right? In the financial accounting sense. It's a total write-off. And then we also have the net realizable value. Spoilage, 600. Okay? So when would this happen? That we have a loss. What is the fact circumstance? I'm going to get an assistant. You know how the magicians always have assistants to, you know, hold stuff up? Maybe I need an assistant. Okay, so we have a loss at total transfer. We transferred the net realizable value out to FGI. We have a loss, so, and we're in a traditional system, so this must have been some abnormal accident. You know, like something fell over, something broke, like something not part of the factory. You know, I gave you the giant examples of a plane crashing through your roof. That would have been a lot more than $6,000, but something like that. And then actually this can be something like delivery truck trying to park or drive and drop something off and backs into a wall. or back, something like that. So that's the fact situation. So if you see a journal entry like the one we just worked on, this should trigger in your mind the concept that you have a abnormal loss. Okay? And now we'll do item number 4, which is one that's not discussed because it's not really any part of theory, but it's totally, absolutely realistic. Okay? So when you look at number 4, it might be one of the ones you see the most frequently if you're in a job shop doing custom orders. Because your customers sometimes come to you and they want wacko crazy stuff. And you say to them, man, I don't know if I can do that. I'm not sure this is going to work, my friend. And yet the customer says, no, I really want you to try. I really want to do this. I really want, whatever thing is. And you say to them, okay, look, we've been doing business for a long time. I know you trust me. We will try to do this. But if it's a total screw up, you got to cover the cost here. Because I don't, and if the customer says yes, then what you have is this journal entry. So if you look at that, hey, look, I'm getting better at this. That was a one-handed white screen shuffle here. So if you look at this last journal entry, what you have is that receivable thing on there. Okay, the other two parts are the same. Okay, so we can sort of copy that logic and see if it makes sense. What could that receivable thing be? Well, it's the story I just told you. That you bill the customer and say, okay, we tried. Come here, come and look. You can prove it to yourself. We tried this, it doesn't work, and we destroyed $6,000 worth of stuff, and we need you to pay. Or it could be an insurance thing. So it does. In this case, they don't really talk about why it was. Let's see if I can get this board out here the same one-handed, elegant, slick way that I put it back. Not quite as cool. So I'm going to do this at the top. Notice the other two things are about the same, the WIP. So we have WIP, job 1, 2, 3, 6, 6. Oh, that I should have put it a little bit further over. We have the $5,400, the fair market value that we lost. And we're going to say AR. And we also have FGI, SP, $600. Actually, this I would say is a fairly frequent type of journal entry because often if you're doing things that are a little bit on the edgy side, you'll have some sort of backup plan, like the customer is backing you up or an insurance company is backing you up or something. And in some places they do a lot of this. If you're doing experimental and design work where you have a client, now that client has to trust you, right? So you have to have a long relationship with them where they're having you try out experimental things that they hope to bring, like products they hope to bring to market. And you might be working on them instead of their factory, or you're in your job shop, you're doing the prototypes. You might have this a lot. So here we go. Take a look then. We have the original journal entries with the errors in them. Then we worked on these. We're trying, and notice I really think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that like this problem, the way it's written in the book, is just like a step too far for people at your expertise level, because you have to imagine what you have to look at a totally incorrect journal entry and sort of imagine what could they have been thinking. Okay? But now that we've walked you through it and talked about it, it'll probably make a lot more sense. So study this, study your notes, get them out there, but ask yourself the question, because one of the key aspects of this problem is say, what circumstance would lead to this journal entry, right? Because what you don't just want to do journal entries, right? You want to have this model in your deep storage so that you can access it when it's necessary. And hopefully, I hope that in your life you never have to access it for real, because I hope you're over here, in which case it doesn't occur. But the truth is, that's not really going to happen for most of you. Even though there are a lot of people moving in this direction, a lot of people want to do it, it's really hard. And some people aren't even trying, so most of your career is going to be in this environment, okay? And you will potentially have material amounts. And now you guys are really learning what that means, I believe. So unfortunately for all of us, there's a lot of this floating around. So anyway, chapter 5 it is. This is the last video for chapter 5. There's some other really important stuff in there. I typically don't go over it because even though it's hard, it's not something that you need my insight on. So there are a number of really good big problems on overhead, where you have to look at over and under applied overhead and why and do the journal entries. You really need to nail those too. What I find though, like it is through time, is that's the type of thing you are already an expert enough to move yourself in that direction. So with this technical material, what you'll find is that I, in the lectures, focus on things that my experience tells me are stumbling blocks, that even with dedication, you'll struggle to put some of the pieces together because of the complexity. So this is the end of the chapter 5 material that I'll cover. Definitely, you need to nail down the chapter 4 journal entries first. Then as soon as you got those nailed down, roll into the chapter 5 journal entries. And once you have those nailed down, that's when you need to look at this stuff and look at those other big problems, looking at all the overhead issues going on. So that will be it until next week. Quizzes are back. Grades are very good. I believe, I haven't done this online before, so as you know, a number of mistakes have already been made. I tried to release the statistics to you so that you can see where you fit, like the positioning in the class, and get a feel for what's going on around you. Normally when you were here, you would have many ways to do that. So take a look at that. I would say the marks are really good. A lot of the replies are really good. And once again, it has happened. Every time I give you a quiz or an exam and I'm reading your essay answers, it always happens that at least one student has an answer that was better than what I thought the answer was. Why? Because you guys are smart. I'm not the smartest person involved in this, right? I can guarantee you some of you guys out there are smarter than me, a lot of you maybe, and you're working on stuff. So it did happen again, and it was fun to read some of those essays and realize, wow, that was really cool. I never thought of that before. And a couple of times I actually wrote that down. So a couple of you will have that in your notes. I didn't always write it down, but often I write it down. And if you somehow take this class next year and you're the person that wrote one of these things, you'll find that on the board sometimes I steal the ideas you give me, and I don't cite them without attribution. Maybe that makes I don't know, plagiarism. Anyway, so it was pretty cool to see that, and I see it's on every exam. Whenever I see this stuff, it always reminds me that we're all playing the same game here and capable of delivering the same result. So anyway, good luck with chapter 5. I will be monitoring the chat room over the weekend, and if you have questions on the spreadsheet, you can post them to the chat. What I'm going to say right now is that if you do not find a way to do the macros by Friday at noon for Macintosh users, you're off the hook, because I currently don't have a Mac of that era. And so I actually can't test it on my own, okay? I expect you to make a try, circulate some, see if there's something in here that you guys missed the first time around underneath that will allow you to do that. But finally, if you just say a note, like in the rubric when you turn it in, saying, I tried several things, you don't have to tell me what you tried. I tried several things and I'm unable to get the print macro to work on my Macintosh. Just write that in. One sentence, doesn't even have to be a complete sentence, just one little phrase, okay? So, good luck. We'll be having some more videos next week on Chapter 7, where we'll be in the big time, folks. So make sure that Chapter 5 is nailed down. Bye-bye.